My name is Bridget, and at 34, I never imagined I'd be a widow. 3 months ago, my husband of 11 years, Adam, died suddenly from an aneurysm. Just days after we buried him, I forced myself to attend my nephew Lucas's first birthday party. That's where my sister Cassandra dropped a bombshell. She announced, in front of everyone, that Lucas was Adam's son and even presented a will, claiming half of my $800,000 house. What she didn't realize was why I could barely hold back my laughter. If you're watching this and family drama feels all too familiar, stick around, like and subscribe. You'll want to hear how I handled what happened next. Adam and I met 12 years ago, at a charity auction for children with cancer. I was volunteering, helping organize the silent auction. When he outbid everyone for a painting I'd been admiring all night, a watercolor of the Boston skyline at sunset, with vibrant oranges and purples bleeding into the harbor. After winning, he walked right over, handed it to me, and said with a smile that made his blue eyes crinkle at the corners, "I noticed you looking at this all night. I think it belongs with you." That was Adam, thoughtful, observant, generous. To a fault, I fell for him instantly. We had our first date the very next night, and it felt like we'd known each other forever. He was a brilliant but humble corporate attorney, the kind of man who remembered waitstaff by name and asked sincere questions about their lives. 8 months after we met, he proposed on the harbor, with the real skyline mirroring the painting. That had brought us together not long after our first anniversary. We stretched ourselves financially and bought a Victorian home in Beacon Hill for $800,000. Adam had just made partner at his firm, and I was building a reputation as an interior designer. The house needed work, but it had good bones, high ceilings, and a tiny garden out back where I imagined future children playing. Those children never came, though not for lack of trying. For years we charted, planned, and hoped. Then came the doctors, the tests, and the procedures, for exhausting rounds of IVF that drained our savings and our spirits. I still remember the silence on the drive home after our final failed attempt. Adam reached across the console, took my hand, and neither of us spoke, because we both knew that was the end of that road. That night, sitting on our porch swing, he told me, "We can still have a beautiful life. You and me, that's enough." And he meant it. We rebuilt, we traveled, threw ourselves into our careers, and renovated the house room by room until it became the home I'd always dreamed of. Adam encouraged me when I launched my own interior design firm. Life was full different from what we planned, but beautiful in its own way. My younger sister Cassandra was always hovering at the edges of our happiness. She's 4 years younger, 30 no, and had always been the family's wild child. While I studied design and built my business, she bounced between jobs and relationships. Our parents constantly worried over her, making excuses for her behavior and bailing her out of financial messes. Cassandra and I had a complicated relationship from the start. She's undeniably gorgeous, with an effortless charm that draws people in, but there was always an undercurrent of competition from her side. If I accomplished something, she had to one-up me. When I started dating Adam, she suddenly became interested in law students. When we bought our house, she complained endlessly about her apartment, fishing for our parents to help her upgrade. It was exhausting, but Adam always encouraged me to maintain the relationship. "She's your only sister," he'd remind me. "Family is important." 2 years ago, Cassandra began dating Tyler, a ruggedly handsome bartender she met through friends' tattoos, motorcycle, and all the things our parents disapproved of. Their relationship seemed volatile from the outside, dramatic breakups followed by passionate reconciliations. Then, last Thanksgiving the year before Adam died, Cassandra shocked us all with a pregnancy announcement. She'd never expressed any interest in having children. In fact, she often mocked my own desire for kids, calling it giving in to societal expectations. And yet, there she was, crying dramatic tears about the miracle of life. I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting. After years of heartbreak and failed treatments, Cassandra had accidentally achieved what we desperately wanted. But I pushed those feelings down. I was genuinely happy for her and determined to be the best aunt I could be. Lucas was born, healthy, 8 pounds, 4 ounces. I was at the hospital with flowers and a handmade blanket I'd knitted for months. Cassandra seemed overwhelmed by motherhood from day one, often calling me in tears over Lucas's colic or her exhaustion. I stepped in as much as I could, sometimes keeping Lucas overnight so she could rest. Adam was less involved with Lucas than I was. In hindsight, I assumed it was because of our own infertility that maybe bonding with someone else's baby was painful for him. He was always kind when Cassandra brought Lucas over but kept a distance I never questioned. Then came that terrible Tuesday morning. Adam complained of a headache before work. I suggested he stay home, but he insisted it was just a migraine and kissed me goodbye. "I'll call you after the meeting," he said. That call never came. Instead, the hospital called. By the time I arrived, he was gone. A brain aneurysm. Nothing could have saved him. He was just 30-6. The days after were a blur of arrangements and unbearable grief. Cassandra was oddly absent through most of it, texting excuses about Lucas being sick or not finding a babysitter. When she finally showed up at the funeral, she stayed briefly, kept to herself, and left before the reception. I was too numb to think much about it. A week later came Lucas's first birthday. Attending a child's birthday party was the last thing I wanted, but my mother called every day, insisting, "Adam would want you there. Family comes first." So I went, dark circles under my eyes, a wrapped gift on the passenger seat, and an ache in my chest from nights spent reaching for Adam's warmth that wasn't there. Cassandra lived in a small rental in a less desirable part of town. I parked behind a line of cars, took a few deep breaths, grabbed the gift, and went inside. No one should have to fake a smile so soon after losing their husband, I thought. Jenna, one of Cassandra's friends, opened the door. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw me. "Oh, Bridget, you made it," she said, voice oddly strained. She glanced over her shoulder before stepping aside. "Come in, everyone's in the backyard." The tiny house was decorated with blue balloons and streamers. A happy first birthday Lucas banner stretched across the living room wall. A group of people I didn't recognize whispered in the kitchen but fell silent when I passed. There, eyes followed me. In the backyard, more guests stood in clusters, plastic cups in hand. I spotted my parents sitting stiffly at a picnic table, looking uncomfortable. My father jumped up when he saw me, relief flashing across his face. "Bridget," he said, hugging me. "We weren't sure you'd come." "Of course I came," I replied, placing the gift on the table. "Where's the birthday boy?" "With Cassandra," my mother said, not quite meeting my eyes. "They'll be out for cake soon." I mingled awkwardly, accepting condolences, and deflecting questions about how I was holding up. People seemed tense, conversations stopping abruptly whenever I walked up. I chalked it up to them not knowing how to talk to a newly widowed woman. After 30 uncomfortable minutes, Cassandra appeared with Lucas on her hip. She wore a new dress I'd never seen, her hair freshly highlighted. Lucas looked adorable in a tiny button-up shirt and bow tie, kicking his chubby legs at all the attention. Cassandra barely acknowledged me as she placed him in his high chair. She seemed almost euphoric, tapping a plastic spoon against a cup to get everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Lucas's special day," she began, voice carrying across the yard. "This past year has been full of surprises and challenges, as many of you know." Guests exchanged uneasy glances. My mother stared at her shoes. "I've been keeping a secret," Cassandra continued, resting a hand on Lucas's head. "One I can't hide anymore, especially after recent events." A chill ran through me. Something was very wrong. "Lucas isn't Tyler's son," she announced, locking eyes with me. "He's Adam's." And just like that, the world stopped. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and I felt my father tense beside me, but all of it faded into the background against the roar in my ears. 2 years ago, Bridget's husband and I had a brief affair, at least that's what Cassandra announced. Her voice steady, as if she had practiced every word. "It was a mistake," she declared, "a moment of weakness for both of us. We never wanted to hurt anyone, but these things happen." I stood frozen, barely able to comprehend what she was saying. My sister was claiming she had slept with my husband and worse, that her son, the nephew I adored and helped raise, was actually Adam's child. It was so outrageous, I almost laughed right then. But Cassandra wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "Adam knew the truth about Lucas," she said. "Before he died, he updated his will." She held the page aloft. "He wanted his son taken care of. This document states that half of the house Adam and Bridget owned belongs to Lucas as his biological child." Every pair of eyes in the yard turned to me. I saw pity, morbid curiosity, and deep discomfort. My parents looked stricken. My father half rose from his chair, uncertain if he should intervene. And then, to my own surprise, as much as anyone else's, I felt a strange smile tug at my lips, not a happy grin, but the kind that forms when something is so ridiculously false, it borders on comedy. I pressed my lips together, trying not to burst out laughing. "Oh, I see," I said evenly, after a moment. I took a slow sip of water to give myself time to suppress the inappropriate laughter bubbling inside. "May I see that will, Cassandra?" Her confident expression faltered. She clearly hadn't expected that reaction. Moving slowly, she handed me the document. It was a typed page with what looked like Adam's signature scrawled at the bottom. A single glance told me it was fake. The legal phrasing was completely wrong, not at all like the formal documents Adam used to bring home. And the signature, while similar to his, was off. The connecting stroke between the A and D was incorrect, and the last flourish was far too exaggerated. I folded the page carefully and handed it back. "Thank you for showing me this. I think I'll be going now." "That's it?" Cassandra asked, visibly confused. "You're not going to say anything else?" "Not right now," I replied calmly, gathering my purse. "This is Lucas's day, we can discuss it privately later." I said goodbye to my shell-shocked parents, promising to call them soon. As I walked to my car, whispers followed me. The cheerful party atmosphere had completely collapsed. Inside the car, finally out of view, I let go. The laugh I'd been suppressing erupted, starting small but growing until tears streamed down my face. They weren't tears of joy, but a wild mix of grief, rage, and sheer disbelief at my sister's audacity, because Cassandra didn't know the truth. She couldn't. Adam and I had never told anyone, not even our parents. And that secret made her entire lie not just cruel, but biologically impossible. The truth began 3 years earlier. Long before Lucas was conceived, we'd invited Cassandra over for dinner to celebrate her new marketing job, the longest she'd ever held. Adam made his famous lasagna, and we opened a nice bottle of wine. Everything was fine until I stepped away to handle a client's emergency call. I spent nearly 20 minutes walking a wealthy client through an art installation issue over the phone. When I returned, something had shifted. Adam looked uneasy, and Cassandra was sitting closer to him, her hand resting on his arm as she laughed at something I hadn't heard. I brushed it off at the time. Cassandra had always been affectionate, and the wine had been flowing, but that night, as Adam got ready for bed, he seemed troubled. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, sitting on the edge of the mattress. "I don't want this to cause problems between you and your sister, but I also can't keep it from you." He explained that while I was on the phone, Cassandra made inappropriate comments about how lucky I was to have him, then implied he deserved someone who could truly appreciate him. When he rejected her, she laughed it off as a joke, saying he was being too sensitive if he thought she meant it seriously. I was hurt, though not entirely shocked. Cassandra had always tested boundaries. We decided to let it go, chalking it up to too much wine and her competitive streak. But it didn't stop. Over the next few months, she accidentally touched Adam whenever my back was turned, sent text messages that straddled the line between friendly and suggestive, and once even showed up at his office uninvited, asking him to lunch. Each time, Adam shut her down firmly and told me right away. After the office incident, we finally confided in my parents about Cassandra's behavior. It went poorly. They insisted Adam was misreading her friendliness, and my mother, in misguided goodwill, even suggested Adam might just be flattered and exaggerating. That night, Adam and I made a decision. We'd distance ourselves without creating an outright family war. We declined invitations if Cassandra was attending, never allowed her to be alone with Adam, and eventually, he blocked her number after a particularly late and suggestive text. Then came the medical issue that changed everything. Adam had been experiencing persistent pain for weeks before finally seeing a urologist. The diagnosis, a varicose enlarged veins in the scrotum requiring surgery. The operation went smoothly, but due to complications and risk of recurrence, the doctor recommended performing a vasectomy during the same procedure. It was a tough decision, given our past struggles with fertility, but Adam's health came first. We agreed. The vasectomy happened 2 years before Lucas was conceived. We never told anyone. Even our parents were unaware. After years of invasive questions about why we didn't have children, we had learned to protect our privacy. The only people who knew were Adam, me, and his doctors. As Adam recovered, sitting in our garden with an ice pack discreetly tucked in place, he made a prediction that seemed paranoid at the time. "Cassandra's not finished," he said. "One day, she might try something bigger." I laughed, but Adam was serious. The following week, he scheduled a meeting with our family attorney, James Wilson. I went with him as he detailed Cassandra's advances and the vasectomy. James advised us to document everything: medical records, texts, emails, even dates and times of Cassandra's behavior. You never know what might become relevant, James said. Better to have it and not need it than the other way around. We took his advice. Adam formally updated his will through legal channels, leaving everything to me. James kept certified copies. The originals went into a safety deposit box Adam jokingly called our disaster kit. The morning after Lucas's party, I drove to the bank. The manager, who had known us for years, expressed condolences and escorted me to the vault. Alone, in the small viewing room, I opened the box. Inside was everything Adam had prepared, his legitimate notarized will leaving everything to me, medical records confirming the vasectomy. 2 years before Lucas's conception, a journal where Adam had documented every inappropriate interaction with Cassandra, dates, quotes, and all. Printed copies of her suggestive texts. A signed letter from James confirming he witnessed Adam's real will and could verify its authenticity. And at the very bottom, a sealed envelope with my name written in Adam's familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Bridget," it began. "If you're reading this, it means something has happened to me, and you've needed these documents. I hope you're old and gray when this day comes, and Cassandra's antics are nothing but a silly memory. But if the worst has happened, and she's tried to hurt you while I'm gone, know that I prepared for this. Use these papers to protect yourself. You are loyal, loving, and kind, but you also deserve protection from those who'd take advantage of your heart. I love you beyond words, beyond time. Whatever happens, know that." Adam, tears streamed down my cheeks as I read his words. Feeling his love and protection reach for me, even from beyond the grave. My practical, thoughtful husband had anticipated something like this, not this exact scenario perhaps, but the possibility that Cassandra might exploit his death for her own gain. I carefully placed everything back in the box, except what I needed: copies of the medical records, the valid will, and selected entries from Adam's journal. Then I called James Wilson and scheduled an appointment for later that afternoon. James's law office was housed in a converted brownstone in downtown Boston, a place that radiated quiet wealth and absolute discretion. I had only been there a handful of times with Adam, but the receptionist recognized me immediately. Her expression softened with sympathy. "Mrs. Preston," she said, standing to greet me. "Mr. Wilson is expecting you. Please accept my condolences on your loss." James, now in his 60s with silver hair and reading glasses balanced on the end of his nose, had been Adam's mentor when he first joined the firm. Their friendship had endured even after Adam moved to a different practice. When I entered, James rose, came around his desk, and gave me a brief, warm embrace. "Bridget," he said gently, motioning for me to sit. I was devastated to hear about Adam. He truly was one of the good ones. He was, I agreed, my voice catching. And it seems he was right to prepare for the worst with my sister. I explained what had happened at Lucas's birthday party, showing him the forged will Cassandra had presented. James examined it, his expression darkening as he studied the pages. "This is a very sloppy forgery," he said finally. "The wording is all wrong, and while the signature looks similar, it would never withstand expert scrutiny. The fact that she even attempted this is deeply troubling." I showed him the documents I had retrieved from the safety deposit box, the legitimate will, Adam's journal documenting Cassandra's behavior over the years, and the medical records confirming Adam's vasectomy. Adam was nothing if not meticulous. James murmured, scanning the files. "These medical records alone disprove her claim. The vasectomy was done 2 years before Lucas was conceived. It is biologically impossible for Adam to be the father. What should I do?" I asked helplessly. "I don't want to humiliate her publicly, but I can't let her steal half my home with lies." James leaned back, considering. "First, we need more information. I suggest hiring a private investigator to look into Cassandra's situation. Fraud of this kind almost always has a financial motive." He recommended Frank Delaney, a former police detective who frequently handled sensitive cases for the firm. I agreed, and James called him immediately. Explaining the situation in broad strokes, Frank arrived an hour later, a stocky man with a Boston accent and a no-nonsense manner. He listened intently as I laid out everything, taking detailed notes and asking pointed questions about Cassandra's history, her finances, and her relationships. It struck me how little I truly knew about my sister's current life. We had grown distant since Lucas's birth. My efforts to be involved as an aunt were often met with coldness or outright dismissal. I'll need a few days, Frank said when I finished. My first priority will be her finances and the identity of the child's actual father. Do you know anything else about him? I shared what little I knew about Tyler, the bartender Cassandra had been dating when she became pregnant. I had only met him a few times. He always seemed disinterested in family gatherings. Last I heard, they were still together, I said, but she rarely mentions him anymore. He wasn't even at the party, which seemed odd for the father of the birthday boy. Frank nodded. That's a good place to start. I'll be in touch soon. 3 days later, Frank called and asked to meet at James's office. When I arrived, both men were reviewing a stack of documents spread across the conference table. Mrs. Preston, Frank began, once I sat down, I've uncovered some troubling information about your sister. According to his investigation, Cassandra was drowning in debt over $75,000 owed across credit cards, personal loans, and unpaid medical bills for Lucas, who had needed heart surgery shortly after birth. Her credit score was abysmal. She'd been denied 3 additional loans in the past month. She's also facing eviction, Frank said, sliding a document toward me. This is a copy of the notice her landlord filed last week. She has until the end of the month to pay for months back, rent or leave. As for Tyler, Frank continued, he had abandoned Cassandra and Lucas shortly after Lucas was born. He'd moved to Seattle with a new girlfriend and sent only minimal child support. Barely $200 a month, and even that inconsistently. Frank then produced a set of printed text messages. She's been talking about her plan to take part of your house for weeks, he said grimly. I recognized the name of the recipient, Jenna, the woman who had opened the door at the party. The messages were devastating. Adam's death is terrible, but maybe it's finally my chance to get what I deserve. That house is worth at least $800K now. If I play this right, I'll have a nest egg for Lucas and me. The will is almost ready. My friend Dave is good with Photoshop. He found Adam's signature online from a charity auction. It looks legit. Bridget's always been the golden child. Time for me to get my share. She had 11 years with a great guy. The least she can do is share the wealth now that he's gone? Reading the cold calculation in my sister's words made me physically ill. This wasn't just desperation, it was premeditated, fraud built on my grief. There's more, Frank said gently. I ran a background check on Tyler. He has a history of domestic violence charges from a previous relationship and currently has a warrant out for unpaid child support for another child in New Hampshire. He's not someone you'd want near your nephew. I sat frozen, trying to process it all. My sister wasn't just struggling, she was willing to ruin Adam's name and destroy my marriage's memory to fix her finances. Worse, her choices put Lucas in a dangerous situation. What am I supposed to do with all of this? I asked, looking between James and Frank. I can't expose her publicly. Lucas is innocent. He's still my nephew. James removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. You have a few options, Bridget. We could press charges for attempted fraud and forgery. That would likely carry criminal penalties, maybe even jail time given the money involved. He paused, seeing my anguish. Or, we handle it privately. Confront her with the evidence, require her to retract her claims, and negotiate an arrangement. That protects you and the child. I left the office with a heavy heart and a folder full of evidence. That evening, I called my therapist, Dr. Laurel Chen, whom I'd been seeing since Adam's death, and booked an emergency session. In her calm, plant-filled office, I poured out the entire situation. I'm so angry I can barely see straight, I admitted, but Lucas is just a baby. None of this is his fault. And despite everything, Cassandra is still my sister. Dr. Chen listened carefully, occasionally asking questions about my lifelong relationship with Cassandra. It sounds like this pattern of competition and manipulation has been present since childhood, she observed. This is an escalation, not an isolated incident. What would you do? I asked, desperate. I can't make your decision, she replied. But I will. Say this, compassion doesn't mean allowing yourself to be victimized. You can be kind and still enforce firm boundaries and consequences. After much reflection, I made my decision. I would confront Cassandra privately, laying out all the evidence. She could choose, face legal action for her fraud, or agree to a compromise that provided for Lucas while holding her accountable. The next morning, I called her. We need to talk about the will, I said when she answered. Can you come to my house tomorrow afternoon? Just Lucas. I knew you'd come around, she replied smugly. I'll be there at 2. I spent the morning preparing, arranging the documents in a logical order and setting up recording devices, per James's advice. Massachusetts is a two-party consent state, he'd warned me. You can't record her secretly, but you can ask her permission at the start, framing it as a way to ensure both of you have a record of the agreement. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I drew in a long breath, steadying myself before opening the door. On the porch stood Cassandra, perfectly polished in a new outfit, her confidence radiating through her posture. Come in, I said, leading her into the living room. I'd arranged 2 chairs facing each other with a coffee table between them. On the table sat a recorder, 2 glasses of water, and a folder of documents. I hope you don't mind if I record our conversation, I told her. Considering the legal nature of what we're discussing, it seems like the smart thing to do. Cassandra hesitated for only a moment before giving a small nod. Sure, whatever makes you comfortable. This should be pretty straightforward anyway though. Will is clear. I pressed the button on the recorder, stating the date and time aloud, confirming that Cassandra had agreed to be recorded. Then I settled back, studying her face carefully. Before we discuss the will, I began, I want to understand exactly what you're claiming happened between you and Adam. Cassandra launched into a carefully rehearsed story. She claimed they'd had an affair 2 years ago, during a period when Adam and I were supposedly having problems, though we weren't. According to her, she and Adam had met several times at a downtown hotel, where he allegedly confessed his unhappiness in our marriage and where Lucas was conceived. He always meant to tell you, she said with wide, practiced eyes. But when Lucas was born with his heart condition, he didn't want to add any more stress. He promised he'd provide for his son, though. I sat in silence, letting her finish, all the while noting the inconsistencies in her timeline and the details that clashed with what I knew about Adam's schedule. When she stopped talking, I began asking questions. Which hotel? I asked. The Mandarin Oriental, she replied without hesitation. And which room? She faltered slightly. It was on a high floor. I don't remember the exact number. What days of the week did you usually meet? Tuesdays, sometimes Thursdays. I kept pressing with more specific questions. When he told you he was working late? What did Adam order from room service? Which side of the bed did he prefer? Did he shower before or after? I asked the kinds of questions only someone truly intimate with Adam would know. Her answers grew vague and contradictory. Frustration flashed across her face. Why does any of this matter? She finally snapped. The point is, Lucas is Adam's son, and the will proves Adam wanted to provide for him. Actually, I said calmly, opening my folder, both of those claims are provably false. I placed medical records on the table between us. 2 years before Lucas was conceived, Adam had a vasectomy following varicocele surgery. It was completely successful, confirmed by follow-up tests. After that procedure, it was physically impossible for him to father a child. Cassandra's face drained of color. She picked up the medical papers with trembling hands, scanning the clinical terms and dates. These could be faked, she muttered weakly. They're not, I replied, and Adam's doctor is prepared to testify to their authenticity if necessary. But that's just the beginning. I pulled out the legitimate, notarized will, properly filed with the court. This is Adam's actual will, drafted by James Wilson and witnessed by 2 partners at his firm. As you can see, it leaves everything to me. There's no mention of Lucas. Cassandra's confidence was visibly crumbling, but she tried to recover. He must have changed it after this was drawn up. The will I have is more recent. The will you have, I said, evenly, is a forgery. And not even a good one. James has already identified multiple legal inconsistencies, and the signature is clearly fake. Forging a will is a felony in Massachusetts, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. I continued laying out the evidence, piece by piece of journal entries documenting Cassandra's inappropriate advances, her text messages with Jenna outlining the plan, and the report from Frank's investigation detailing her financial troubles, eviction notice, and Tyler's abandonment. We know everything. Cassandra, I said, watching her sit in stunned silence. The only question now is what happens next. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then, to my surprise, she began to cry, not the theatrical tears she often used to manipulate our parents, but deep gut-wrenching sobs. I didn't know what else to do. She gasped between sobs. I'm about to be homeless. Lucas and I will be on the street in 2 weeks. Tyler left us with nothing. The medical bills keep piling up. I thought if I could just get some money from the house. So you decided to destroy Adam's reputation? I cut in, my voice hard. To tell everyone he cheated on me. To forge legal documents. I was desperate. She shouted, her sorrow shifting to anger. You have everything: this big house, a successful business, everyone's respect. What do I have? A baby with a heart condition, $75,000 in debt, and an eviction notice. Try making good decisions in that situation. Her outburst hung heavy between us. And despite everything, the lies, the betrayal, the raw honesty of her words stirred something inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a spark of understanding. Lucas is Tyler's son then, isn't he? I asked more gently. She nodded, wiping her tears. Yes. Adam never touched me like that. I tried with him years ago, but he always shut me down. He was annoyingly loyal to you. As for the will, my friend Dave helped me make it. He's a graphic designer and thought faking a signature would be easy. I only planned to use it to pressure you into giving me money? I never thought you'd actually investigate this deeply. I turned off the recorder and leaned back, considering my next move. Cassandra watched me nervously, clearly bracing for the worst. I could press charges, I said finally. What you did was illegal, not to mention cruel and calculated. No, she whispered miserably. But that would hurt Lucas, I continued. And despite everything, he's my nephew. I love him. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell everyone the truth, that you lied about the affair. That Lucas isn't Adam's son, and that you forged the will. You'll apologize, publicly, to me and to Adam's memory. And then what? She asked, her voice small. We'll still be evicted. I'm not finished, I replied. In exchange for your full confession and a legal agreement never to pull something like this again. I'll help you and Lucas. Not by giving you half my house, but by setting up a trust fund for Lucas's education and medical needs, and helping you find stable housing. Her eyes widened. Why would you do that after everything I've done? Not for you, I said honestly. For Lucas, and because Adam would have wanted me to help his nephew, even if his mother tried to ruin his reputation. There will be conditions, I added. You'll attend therapy and financial counseling. You'll maintain steady employment, and you'll allow me to be part of Lucas's life to ensure he's being properly cared for. If you violate any of these conditions, the support stops immediately. Cassandra sat quietly for a long time, processing my words. I don't deserve your help, she finally said. No, I agreed. You don't. But Lucas deserves a stable home and medical care. And I deserve to have Adam's memory protected. This way, we both get what we need. After more discussion, she agreed to my terms. We planned to meet with James the following day to formalize the agreement. And she would make her public confession at a family dinner the next weekend. When I showed her to the door, she paused. I really am sorry, Bridget, she said quietly. I've been jealous of you my whole life. Everything always seems so easy for you. Nothing about my life has been easy, I replied. You just never looked past the surface. Maybe it's time you start. The family dinner that Saturday was tense from the moment it began. My parents arrived early. My mother brought her signature lasagna as a peace offering. I don't know what this is about, she said, setting the dish on my counter, but Cassandra's been calling us in tears, saying you're forcing her into some family meeting. Just wait until everyone's here, I said, pouring her a glass of wine. This needs to be addressed once, with everyone present. By 7 o'clock, we were all seated around my dining table, my parents, Cassandra, without Lucas, who was with a babysitter, and me. James had advised me to record this conversation as well, so a small recorder sat in the center of the table. Thank you all for coming, I began, after explaining the recording. I've asked Cassandra to share some important information with you. Cassandra, my sister looked pale, her usual bravado gone. Staring down at her plate, she spoke in barely more than a whisper. I lied about Lucas being Adam's son. Adam and I never had an affair. Lucas is Tyler's child, and I forged the will I showed at the birthday party. My parents stared at her in shock. But why would you do such a thing? My father demanded. Do you have any idea what that claim did to your sister? To Adam's reputation? Cassandra explained her desperate financial situation. her voice growing steadier as she detailed Tyler's abandonment, the mounting debts, and the eviction notice. As she spoke, I saw my mother's expression shift from horror to sympathy. "Oh, honey," she murmured when Cassandra finished. "Why didn't you just come to us for help? You didn't have to make up such terrible lies." "Would you have given me $400,000? Cassandra asked bluntly. "Because that is what I would have gotten if my plan had worked half the value of Bridget's house." "Of course, we could not give you that kind of money," my father said, "but we could have helped with the rent, at least temporarily. Instead, you chose to try to defraud your own sister while she was grieving her husband." "I know it was wrong," Cassandra admitted. "Bridget has already made that abundantly clear. She has the evidence to press charges against me if she wanted to." My mother turned to me in alarm. "You would not do that to your own sister, would you, Bridget?" I felt a flash of frustration at her immediate defense of Cassandra even. "Now, I could," I said firmly. "What she did was not just immoral but illegal. Forgery and fraud are felonies." "But she is family," my mother insisted, "and she has Lucas to think about." "I am family too," I replied, my voice rising slightly. "Your daughter Tootha, one who just lost her husband and then had to defend his memory against false accusations of infidelity. Where was your concern for me in all this?" My father looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. "Of course, we care about you, Bridget, but Cassandra has always needed more help, more guidance." "And whose fault is that?" I asked. "You have been bailing her out of her poor decisions her entire life. Maybe if you had let her face consequences occasionally, she would not have escalated to criminal behavior." My mother gasped. "That is hardly fair, Bridget. We have always treated you girls equally." Cassandra, surprisingly, shook her head. "No, Mom, you have not. Bridget is right. You always made excuses for me, always found ways to fix my mistakes. It did not help MIT just made me think I could do whatever I wanted without consequences." My parents looked stunned at this admission. For perhaps the first time, Cassandra was taking responsibility rather than deflecting blame. "So, what happens now?" my father asked, looking between us. "Is Cassandra going to jail?" "No," I said. "I have decided not to press charges under certain conditions." I outlined the agreement Cassandra and I had reached with James Helpa Trust Fund for Lucas, the therapy and financial counseling requirements, and the stable employment condition. "That is very generous," my father said, looking relieved, especially after what she did. "It is more than generous," Cassandra agreed quietly. "It is more than I deserve." "Well," my mother said, brightening, "this is all working out for the best. Cassandra has apologized, Bridget is helping with Lucas, and we can put this ugly business behind us." "It is not that simple, Mom," I said firmly. "Trust has been broken here. Healing will take time, if it happens at all, and there need to be boundaries going forward." "What kind of boundaries?" she asked, looking worried. "For one thing, I need you both to stop enabling Cassandra's behavior. No more bailouts, no more excuses. She needs to stand on her own feet with appropriate support that does not perpetuate dependency." My father nodded slowly. "That seems reasonable. And I need you to respect that my relationship with Cassandra will be different now. I will be involved in Lucas's life because I love him and want the best for him. But Cassandra and I will not be close the way we once were, at least not for a long time." My mother looked distressed. "But we are family. We need to stick together, especially now." "Being family does not mean tolerating abuse, Mom," I said gently. "What Cassandra did was abusive. She tried to use my grief to manipulate me, to take advantage of me at my most vulnerable. That has consequences even within a family." The remainder of the dinner was subdued, with my parents processing this new reality. When they left, my father hugged me tightly, whispering, "I am proud of you, Bridget. Adam would be too." My mother hugged me as well, but her eyes were sad already, mourning the idealized family dynamic she had always pretended we had. Cassandra was the last to leave. At the door, she hesitated. "I really am sorry," she said again. "Not just for the will and the lies, but for everything, for the years of competition and jealousy. For not being the sister you deserved." "I know," I replied. "And I hope the therapy helps you understand why you made these choices. Lucas deserves a mother who is emotionally healthy and honest." "Do you think you will ever forgive me?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. "I do not know," I answered truthfully. "But I am willing to see where this new path takes us for Lucas's sake, and maybe someday for hours too. The drive home with my parents was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I knew one thing for certain: our family would never be the same. But perhaps, in time, it could be something healthier built on honesty rather than illusion. 1 year after Adam's death, I stood in our garden, watching the spring bulbs push through the soil. The daffodils Adam had planted the previous fall were blooming a riot of yellow against the newly green lawn. I felt a bittersweet ache seeing them, knowing he had put them in the ground with hopes of seeing them bloom. So much had changed. In that year, the trust fund for Lucas was established and already helping with his ongoing medical needs. His heart condition, while requiring monitoring, was responding well to treatment, and he was growing into a cheerful, curious toddler. Cassandra had surprised everyone by truly embracing the conditions of our agreement. 6 months of therapy had helped her recognize patterns of behavior stemming from childhood: the constant need to compete with me, the self-sabotage that had characterized many of her decisions. She had found steady employment as an office manager at a dental practice, a job that provided stability and benefits. Our relationship remained formal but cordial. I saw Lucas regularly, taking him for outings to the park or the children's museum. Cassandra and I did not pretend to be close, but we had found a way to coexist peacefully for Lucas's sake. My parents had struggled initially with the new boundaries I had established. My mother especially found it difficult to accept that her daughters would not have the close relationship she had always envisioned. But over time, they too had adjusted, learning to support Cassandra without enabling her dependency. As for me, the grief support group I had joined shortly after Adam's death had become a lifeline. 12 strangers bound together by loss had become friends, understanding each other in ways that even well-meaning family and friends could not. We met weekly, sharing our journeys through grief, celebrating small victories, and supporting each other through the inevitable setbacks. 3 months after the confrontation with Cassandra, I had established the Adam Preston Foundation for Legal Education, providing scholarships to students from underprivileged backgrounds interested in corporate law. It gave me purpose to see Adam's legacy continuing in the careers of young idealistic lawyers who might otherwise never have had the opportunity to enter the profession. Old friends had stepped up in ways I could never have anticipated. Adam's law partners checked in regularly, inviting me to dinners and events, making sure I was not isolated in my grief. My college roommate Sarah flew in from Chicago monthly just to spend weekends with me, sometimes doing nothing more than watching movies and ordering takeout. And then there was Michael. I met him at a fundraiser for the foundation 6 months after Adam died. He was a professor of ethics at Boston University, thoughtful and kind, with a quiet sense of humor that reminded me of Adam in some ways. We started as friends, sharing coffee after foundation meetings, then gradually transitioned to occasional dinners. It was different than what I had with Adam, as it should be. Michael understood that Adam would always be part of my life, that loving again did not mean replacing what came before. We were taking things slowly, both of us cautious but hopeful. Standing in the garden that spring morning, I reflected on everything Adam had taught me, not just during our years together, but even after he was gone. His foresight in preparing those documents had protected me when I was at my most vulnerable. His journal entries had validated my experiences with Cassandra when my own parents tried to dismiss them. His love continued to shield me even in his absence. I had learned difficult lessons through this ordeal. That family relationships need clear boundaries to remain healthy. That documentation is not just a legal precaution, but sometimes an emotional necessity. That forgiveness does not have to mean forgetting or allowing harmful patterns to continue. That sometimes the people we expect to protect us are the ones we need protection from. But I had also learned about my own strength. I had faced Cassandra's betrayal, navigated the legal complexities, and made difficult decisions about how to move forward, all while processing the devastating loss of my husband. I had found a way to honor Adam's memory while beginning to build a new life for myself. The daffodils swayed in the spring breeze, resilient after the long winter. I thought about how grief is like that too, not a straight line, but a series of seasons, each bringing its own challenges and unexpected beauties. I was not the same person I had been before Adam died, before Cassandra's betrayal. I was stronger in some ways, more cautious in others, but ultimately more authentic in how I approached relationships and boundaries. Sometimes the most painful betrayals force us to find strength we never knew we had. I said softly to the garden, Adam had loved. You could not have known what would happen after you were gone. But somehow, you prepared me to face it. And in that way, your love protects me still.